Hi, we're here today. It's October 25th, 3 p.m., and we're here for the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting. And present, we have Ann Zabala and Art Becky, as well as Gary Riedner with us. And we have the rest of the staff out there in the audience. So we have a couple of things on the agenda today. The very first one is approval of the Public Works Finance Committee meeting minutes. Any objections, any comments?
None.
Look
Look good.
Approve on the consent decree.
Consent decree.
I don't know. I like
There
it.
you
Lot line adjustment between 1421 and 1427 Laney Lane. And that will, Amy's already ready.
I'm
Thank you,
ready.
Amy. Yes.
Ready if you are. So yeah, as you said, today we have a lot line adjustment for 1421, 1427 Laney Drive, and 1228 Ponderosa Drive, and 1204 Tamarack Drive. As usual, I can't work the clicker. Okay, we're just going to drive it from the keyboard.
We may just want to check the batteries before we start our meetings.
It's probably me. It happens every time.
Really weak.
Okay. So the four lots in question are the two Laney Drive, the two lots on Laney Drive. One is just over 12,000 square feet. One is just over 11,000 square feet. And the lot on Ponderosa is just over 17,000 square feet. And the one on Tamarack is just under 16,000 square feet. This is the survey that was done showing the adjusted lot line as proposed. Essentially, it's shifting this lot line here on the rear boundary of all properties 10 feet to the north, shortening both of the lots on Laney Drive. So this green line represents the new lot line to be drawn, with a new lot line here as well. The lots, as proposed, if approved, would look similar to this. The lots on Laney Drive now just under 11,000 square feet. The lot on Ponderosa just over 18,000 square feet, and the one on Tamarack over 16,000 square feet. The zoning for these lots is R1, and in the R1 zoning designation, lots are required to have an 80 feet of frontage, be a minimum of 9,600 square feet. Setbacks in the front are required to be 25 feet, rear of 20 feet, and the sides of 15 feet combined total. All these lots will meet these standards. The lot line adjustment is being proposed to accommodate an existing fence at the rear of the property. So staff's recommendation today would be to approve the lot line adjustment with no conditions, and I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions?
Nothing for me.
Could you switch back to the map of what the lots will look like?
Sure can. Oops.
There, that one. Is there any reason why the other two properties to the east and west weren't involved with this as well? To kind of like give the lot on the far
This one
west
here?
side, that little chunk, and then the lot on the far east side, the other chunk of the Laney Lane
This one
property,
here.
instead of having these interesting little ears sticking out, other than legal
Yeah,
complications.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that Scott Becker, from the engineering firm who did the survey, is hearing him potentially answer those questions. As far as from a zoning perspective, abnormally shaped lots are not a concern. I don't know if they just didn't approach the other neighboring properties to find out if they were interested. But from a zoning perspective, it's not necessarily an issue for zoning.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear.
Me too. And whether or not it comes with compensation on that? Thank you.
Hi there. Scott Becker with Hodgin Associates, 405 South Washington. And it was really Mark Pica just wanted to adjust that fence line and was able to contact these two owners and work out a deal with them, and whether it was not a deal that they could work out with the other one. And as far as compensation, I have no idea if there was any compensation other than they would pay for our part to do the survey. But he was just, that fence is already there, and just he didn't see any benefit to trying to fight with the neighbors while he's building houses. So,
Well, it's kind of beneficial to the neighbors. I can't imagine anybody'd say no to
Right.
having a little
Right.
something extra. And it
Right.
was actually pretty decent of Mr. Pika to give up some land for the sake of a pre-existing fence,
mhm.
which is kind of nice. But yeah, other than just the weird.
It does look a little odd, but
Yeah.
But especially the one there at 1204 Tamarack, it kind of just juts out there. I mean, much more so than the other one, the 1228. It's just a little increase, but all of a sudden that takes, I'm not sure where it goes exactly. It's a new lot line, but does it mean the
Yeah.
word? I mean, I'm just curious on how that looks like when you put up a fence. I mean, is it suddenly jutting around there? Is
right.
it just-
And I don't think there's any intention to put up new fences or anything other than just leave the fences as they are currently. And as far as the dynamics of how the neighbors got along, I didn't delve into that. Yeah, he asked if we could do this, and I told him we would approach the city with that proposal.
Okay, so the other question is on 1228, it comes in, goes out past the 1228 a little bit, and then it stops right at that property. And so, never mind, makes sense, I don't know. It seems kind of a weird configuration.
It is a little bit odd configuration, and a lot of it has to do with the configuration of the lots to the south. They're a little abnormal as they are anyway.
So I don't really have any objection other than just wondering why the odd looking result.
And I wish I could offer a better answer than that, but that's how we were approached, and so that's how I presented it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
There's no objection from anybody else, I think. Any objections, Art?
None.
I mean, if no one else is objecting, I think it's approved and it's consent agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, Bill Belknap. Idaho Department of Environmental Quality Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Program Grant Proposal.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So just for a little bit of background, well, it's not going to help if you're going out of order. The state of Idaho has been working to develop electric vehicle charging stations along the state's, both state and U.S. highways throughout the state of Idaho. And so to support that effort, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality has been operating a grant program for the electric vehicle supply equipment to provide cost-sharing funds for the installation of what they're really kind of focusing on is the DC fast charging equipment. So that's the equipment that's capable of recharging a vehicle, but depending upon the vehicle's charging capacity in 15 to maybe 45 minutes from a depleted state to probably up to about 80% charge. So it's something that's valuable to somebody who's on a long distance trip that can stop for 15 to 30 minutes, get enough charge to be able to continue along their way. So this is really not focused on at least specifically in this program for level 2, that might be more of an overnight charger. So this is really the fast charging equipment. The program was funded from the Volkswagen emissions settlement. So that's really where the money came from. And it started off with 2.6 million, I think almost 2 years ago. And they currently have 2.1 million in funding remaining. So they are trying to encourage communities to install this infrastructure. There's only been 4 projects funded so far. The one closest to us would be the Clearwater River Casino, is the one most close. The bulk of the others have either been farther north up at Bonners Ferry or down in southern Idaho. It does prioritize the installation of these facilities in locations that are within 1/2 mile of the state highway system. They want to ensure that it's a location that provides 24-hour access, it's well lit, and they'd also like to see it located in close proximity to shopping or dining opportunities. So certainly it's a chance for somebody driving through to stop to grab lunch, grab sandwich, grab coffee while that charge is happening. We did review several locations within the kind of the downtown core, and for us, we have the intersection of State Highway 8 and 95 really right on 3rd Street on Washington and Jackson with the couplets. We looked at both the South Jackson parking lot, North Jackson parking lot, potentially here at City Hall, but areas that were in close vicinity. and ultimately thought really the best location would be in the South Jackson Street parking lot near the public restroom facility downtown. It gives you a public restroom on that southwest corner of the building. We kind of have a large concrete pad where a transformer could be placed and fit, because we will need a new transformer to feed the charging station. And it just gets you to a public restroom, close proximity to Highway 95 and Highway 8, and as well as to dining and shopping opportunities downtown. The grant program does fund 100% of the installation cost of these facilities when it's located on publicly owned property. And so we would be eligible for that funding. The program will also fund the operations and maintenance of the facility for 5 years. And that is an obligation underneath the grant program. So we would be responsible for coordinating, administering the installation of the facility. We'd have a third party that would own and operate the facility. And then we would fund that activity for the 5-year duration that we're obligated to have the equipment in use. We would recommend, we kind of looked at this and debated internally, and it's hard because we're on the kind of early adoption curve, but you can't watch a football game without seeing essentially every car vehicle advertisement is EVs coming up, and most of the major manufacturers by 2035 or sooner are anticipating shifting entirely to electric vehicles. So, but we do think in order to ensure availability and reliability that we'd have 2 of these charging stations installed. And so that would occupy 2 parking spaces adjacent to the downtown restroom. If the council desires to proceed with this, then we would issue a request for proposals from companies that manufacture, operate, and maintain these charging facilities. And that proposal would be for them to come in and furnish, install, and operate and maintain those for the 5-year duration underneath the grant. Once that respondent has been identified, then we would package it up with a grant application to the state, because they really want to know who's furnishing it, what are the project costs. We've already consulted with Avista in that location to ensure that they could furnish the necessary power, which they can. And then we would submit that grant application to the state probably early next year, with installation happening summer to early fall, probably of next year as well. Installation would be dependent upon receiving that grant funding, and that'll be clear in the RFQ as well. So just to give a visual of the location, and this is the downtown restroom. This is Jackson Street here on the west and Friendship Square here off to the east. So the restroom faces the 4th Street Bay. This is kind of that concrete pad area that would house the transformer, and these would be the 2 parking spaces that we would propose to dedicate to this use. One of these has already been fairly occupied much of the year for farmers market. There's a trailer that's parked there with some farmers market equipment. So, and we've talked with Jen, and they'll work on a way to bring that out every market a year, so we're not having to occupy the stall. So we really are probably occupying 1 stall more than what has been occupied with city equipment or trailers in that location. This is just kind of conceptual. Again, 2 stalls. Transformer pad location, potentially meter and equipment box in the side of the restroom. We've looked at a kind of masonry screen wall just to kind of shield it from view from the front of the restroom. And then the 2 charging pedestals would be located at the head of those 2 parking spaces. And this is just a couple photos of some example fast charge stations. So this at the Brailsford Visitor Center over in Pullman, one located there. And then this one is located in Spokane on the campus there as well. So this is just kind of gives you an example of what the individual charging cabinets look like. Typically, you'll have a CSS connector and a CHAdeMO. Those are just kind of 2 different types of connectors that different manufacturers will utilize. And then we would be looking for something that would be capable of 100 kilowatts or faster charging speed. Many of the newer vehicles are able to accept 100 to up to 200 kilowatts. So that allows them to charge much more quickly and continue on their way. Yes.
So looking at that, does that mean that everybody who has an electric vehicle, of those 2, it should service all the existing?
Should, or they would need to have an adapter. So Tesla has its own proprietary connector that's different. So the 3 you typically see is Tesla's, and theirs proprietary. The CSS, which is more common to most manufacturers. And then CHAdeMO isn't only used by limited. Nissan's, I think domestically, maybe the only manufacturer that use CHAdeMO connection. But the typical you'd have in a public that's not a Tesla charging station would be specifically HCSS or CHAdeMO, and you generally are required to have both to make sure you can service all users.
But if you had a Tesla, you'd have to find a different charging station.
Or have an adapter. So Teslas can get an adapter that connects to their cord that then allows them to use these different charging types, and vice versa.
I have a couple more questions, but you have questions, Audrey.
Yeah, well, kind of a sort of a question. I'm highly enthused about the project and I'm going home on it. But we've been discussing the bathrooms and unisex/family bathrooms in that downtown public bathroom area. And would installing this facility limit our capability and flexibility to provide a unisexual bathroom in that location going forward?
If it was going to be an addition to the building, I would say yes. That would require us to make an adjustment in the future if we anticipate that we're going to add an additional unit to that restroom. I think earlier discussions have been potentially just changing signage and allowing a different use of the existing facility. But if we were looking to add an additional family restroom, unisex restroom on the side of it, this would conflict with that.
So I have another question on that. And one is that the duration, usually it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but they locate it near a place that you can go shopping, you can go eat or something like that. Is there any monitoring? Because those parking lots and those parking spaces are a big commodity and people want to be able to park there for a while. The question is, will we run into a problem with people parking there for 3 hours?
I would expect so. So there'll be a couple things we're going to need to work on. I think one, we'll probably have to modify city code to require or to potentially include the ability to cite somebody for parking in a space that's designated for EV charging only, right? So you wouldn't want to have
Right.
internal combustion vehicle park there and just assume that they can park there. So we probably would need to look at what would be necessary to allow the police department to enforce that. Generally, the companies have what's called an idle charge. So if you plug into your vehicle and it charges and then it reaches full charge, it'll continue to bill you for idle time to try to encourage people not to linger. And it can actually get quite punitive. And they have your credit card when you sign up for the app to charge on these. And so they will start charging you with idle time.
There's a financial incentive to get yourself out of there.
So we will have to work with the city attorney's office and the police department to come up with any necessary modifications to city code to ensure that non-electric vehicles are not violating and parking and obstructing access to the chargers. We also want to make sure that electric vehicles are not parking there while they're not plugged in and charging. So either they're plugged in, charging, and then getting charged idle time if they're going beyond their charging needs, or if they park there and don't plug into charge, they still would be eligibly cited because they're, again, just occupying the space when it's intended to be made open and retained available for people to use. So there'll be a couple of little things we'll need to work, if this project advances, we'll need to work with the city attorney's office and the police department on.
And can you tell me whether or not those two parking places that are taken up now with this, are they handicap parking places or not?
They are not.
Well, I'm all for going forward with this as recommended to approve the project and publish that RFP.
I have a
It's a-
couple questions, but I feel the same. And I actually got a message about this last night. Someone was like,
Oh.
"Are we thinking about getting EV stations?" And I was like, "I'll let you know." So I love that we're talking about it. What does maintenance look like after the initial 5 years, both in terms of cost and actual care? of the
We'll
equipment?
have to see. My expectation is they're trying to obviously subsidize that when utilization it may be low in the early days of EV adoption. So that'll be something that we would have to renegotiate at the end of the 5-year term, decide if we're going to continue with the company and their equipment, and then negotiate whether they would do, maybe there's enough usage and they're generating enough revenue that they would then cover that cost in the future. Or we could decide that we want to discontinue use of that. And I think the hope is that potentially the private sector steps up, the long-term, maybe gasoline service stations start to transition in some way. And so this is kind of an early support for that early adoption of the EV phase. And then once that starts to become more mainstream, then the private sector will step up and support. So it may not be something that we would be in the business of long-term. And it may be that the technology itself also changes over the next 5 to 10 years. That is something different. So that's just something we would have to evaluate after that 5-year time period. Underneath the grant program, we'd have no obligation to maintain or operate the stations beyond that point, and we can discuss that at that time.
Great. Well, I think it's a fabulous idea. And when money comes into for 5 years, I'm all in favor of that. In addition, I will say that I think it should go on the consent agenda, but the other part of that comes up, and but I want everybody to know because I think this is really fun that we're getting to.
Well, once we
it-
come up with the RFP and get responses back, that'll
Uh-huh.
also be for the council as well when we see
Be fun.
those agreements. And then we will also be reaching out. So this is not only available to public entities, so private entities can seek this assistance as well. And so it does fund that 100% when it's on publicly owned property. It funds 80% of the cost when it's on private but open to the public, and then 60% when it's on private and not open to the public. So there is kind of a decreasing cost sharing that happens there. So we do anticipate reaching out to some of the other maybe hotels or others that may benefit from the program and let them know that it's available as well.
Great. And then, sorry if you already addressed this, but timelines, I know we'll put the RFP out and it
Sure.
depends on what comes back.
So the goal is to get the RFP out this maybe in November next month and get it out for 30 days with the response before the end of the year. Our hope would be then to select a company, package up the cost and put the grant application into the state early next year. And then probably a summer to early fall installation time period.
Do you know if since there's only been 4 that have been approved, is it because there haven't been successful grants or there just haven't been grants?
I don't think they've had many requests to the funding.
Oh, good,
for the
then let's
funding.
get in.
Yes.
Great,
Thank you, Bill.
thank
You
you.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any staff reports?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. We're done. We moved on.